in 3. And hello, welcome to another Fridays with Daren. Today we are here with Daren. You guessed it. We're here to talk about some of the most important things that you can do when you're going solar, which are the things you can do to pick the right contractor. So today, Daren's going to use his experience being the right contractor to help give you some criteria that you can use to weed out companies that may not be in your best interest. Remember, when you're picking a contractor, it's a long-term relationship because you want to have a company that's going to be there to help with warranties and support you after you go solar, as well as do an amazing job helping you go solar. Solar is a big investment, so this is very important for you and your family. So with that, I want to introduce Daren. Daren's here with us today. He's got a master's in structural engineering. He's the co-founder of Goldin Solar. He's got a master's in civil engineering from the University of Texas. Expert in solar technology and construction. His passion for sustainability brought him to solar, and he hosts Goldin Solar's YouTube shows, Fridays with Daren, and also our YouTube channel, The Green Stuff. So be sure and check us out on the rest of our YouTube channel at The Green Stuff. Daren, how you doing today?
Doing great, Dane. Thank you for the introduction. Excited to be here. Excited to share some insight with our followers, with our watchers. So I think this is a cool subject. Yeah. How's your week been going?
It's been pretty good. I think I'm getting a little bit stir crazy this week. We've been quarantining again pretty intensely. So but we're all adapting, going for runs in the neighborhood, those sorts of things. So working from home,
Totally.
round 2. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, that's good, man. You got to do everything you can to try to stay sane as well as healthy, because one thing that I've been hearing more and more is if you're feeling crazy, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stir crazy cabin fever, like that's normal. One of the big things that kind of gave me some peace of mind is like, if you're feeling like you're going crazy, take a deep breath and be okay with that, because these are crazy times.
It's very zen. Accept it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Just
cool.
accept that there's a lot of anxiety right now, and put a mask on and go and get your groceries. It's tough times, but we all gotta work together and get through these times. I just want to share with everybody, please wear a mask. I'm working from home. That has made life a little bit more difficult for me in some respects. Sometimes I'm at my desk until midnight and I feel like I just can't get out of the office because I live in it. But it helps me minimize my exposure to other people, and we're all doing our part. We saw the curve go way up and then down, and we all said, yeah, we're over this, we're sick of this, and then it went back up again. So remember, you don't decide when this is over. The virus decides when it's over, or we get to decide when it's over when we have a vaccine, which we don't yet. So we just have to stay together by staying apart. And I'll get past this. We've had much harder times in our past, so this is going to be our struggle in 2020, and we're gonna get through it. Just have to keep staying focused and keep loving each other, loving our neighbors, and staying tolerant and patient, and embracing everyone. But we're gonna survive.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. Yeah, I think it's nice to be able to continue to move forward our cause for sustainability and the transition to solar energy through these Fridays with Daren talks, even given the limitations that we have now with not being able, we're people, I think. We like to be out sharing this in person and spreading the word. So we'll take what we can get, and I'm thankful to get to be here and have a conversation with you today. So let's jump in. So we're talking today about picking the right contractor. How important is it picking the right contractor? I mean, is that as crucial as it seems? Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and the spectrum of options people have to choose from?
Picking the right contractor in the solar industry is very, very, very important. It is, because if we compare ourselves to the other trades, the other construction trades, let's say air conditioning, let's say electrical, let's say finishers, painters, cabinet companies. Any of these other trades have been around for a very, very, very long time. And so the market has really regulated itself. It's really kind of adjusted. And it's embraced the people that are highly reviewed and that do very well. And if a cabinet person decided to create a cabinet company and they did terrible work, and then the reviews spoke for them, and basically they don't do cabinets anymore. There's been time for the other trades that have been around for so long to adjust and level out. Solar, on the other hand, is sort of a tricky combination, dangerous combination. It's a brand new industry, at least to Florida, right? California's been at this for 5 years longer than us, but it's still really new to Florida, and it's explosive at the same time. And by explosive, I mean really we've been incorporated in 2014. So in about 6.5 years, we've seen our consultations go from customers saying, so is this going to heat my swimming pool, to our consultations today of customers saying, tell me the difference between this inverter and this inverter and that panel and that panel. Do I want monocrystalline or polycrystalline? So now we have much more educated customers. So this is much more accepted. And, everywhere I look, the Florida solar industry is just really on the rise at a very aggressive rate. And what that does is, there's always a balance of supply and demand. So where there's a massive amount of demand, there's a massive amount of supply. And so now there's tons and tons of companies coming into the industry. There's companies from out of state coming into the industry, and nothing against them, but maybe they have a lot of experience that's not necessarily applicable to Florida and the very particular Florida constraints. Solar is very unique in that it's to some extent a financial model. It's about putting solar panels are going to save you money and having the ability to demonstrate to our customers how that economic return happens. And if somebody comes from another state with different energy prices and different utility structures, they might not really have an accurate model. So it's imperative that the customer has an accurate model on a financial return. And and then outside of the financial model, there's just sort of general conditions based on the location that somebody is. And so we have hurricanes in South Florida, bad ones. California has fires, earthquakes. So really this has to do with how is the system engineered? Are we picking the right panels that are strong enough for the winds down here? That kind of thing. So, I figured, we let's try to keep it organized and go through a number of things to consider when picking a solar company.
Yeah, so let's look at that. I think a great one to start with is reviews, right? Just to be able to see how many systems a company has done and how well did they do at those systems. Like, can you kind of take us through? I've got some screens I can share kind of the process, but would you talk us through how you think customers should go about doing their diligence on reviews and installation volume? For sure.
This is a reputation-based society. We trust each other, So when we pick a company to do anything, tutoring for our kids, or if we pick a company to do moving when we move from one house to another, anything, you're going to find reviews, restaurants, anything. And we have to trust each other's input, but we have to approach those reviews from the perspective of the consumer and take things in, the proper perspective. So the things that you want to look at when you're looking at reviews is how many reviews does the company have? In other words, this is just statistics. What's the size sample N? Are there a lot of reviews? If there's not, then if there's a company that has one bad review, then that's very different than a company that has 100 bad reviews. Maybe they're a great company and there was just one bad experience. So the size of the sample is very important. The other thing that's very important is the time range of the reviews. Okay, so in today's day and age, there's all sorts of tricks that can be done on the internet. Companies can change addresses and then close that location and start over. So, one of the other things that we'll talk about is how long has the company been in business? I recommend going for companies that have been in business for 5 years or more. And even that 5 years is not a very long time. You wouldn't think of being in business for 5 years as a very long time if you were talking about somebody that's a roofer, for example, or something. But in the solar industry in Florida, 5 years is a long time. Mm-hmm. So that's something that you can see in the reviews, because usually review sites showing reviews show the dates. So if you see a company and they're all 5-star reviews, but they only go back to about a year or even a couple of months, and the company's saying, hey, but we've been in business for 4 years, be suspicious. Why is that? What's going on there?
Cool.
Most review sites don't ask for proof of a contract from the reviewer. So it's very important that the reviews are authentic, right? So you want a big enough sample size. You want to know that they go far back enough in time, because then it's a sample size of time, not just of people. And then you want to know that the reviews are authentic. So a few key things to sort of gauge the authenticity of a review is the tone. When you see something that says absolutely amazing, everything they did was excellent, this is the best company ever, I recommend them to everybody, that doesn't sound like somebody that's actually had the service from the company and has, real kind of critical insight to say about them. So if you see reviews that name names of people, the names of the project managers, the name of the sales rep, the name of the construction installers, John Smith was really courteous. He showed up every day at the time he said. So, and you want specific content. They gave me top-notch materials. I really enjoyed getting the Hanwha Q cells. They really explained to me why they're such an excellent panel. So so when you're looking at reviews, you want to say, how many do they have? How far back in time do they go? And what's the nature of the content? And then obviously, needless to say, hopefully they're good. Hopefully they have good rating. And luckily there's a lot of different review sites. So just in the solar industry, there's Google, there's Yelp, there's the Better Business Bureau, there's there's solarreviews.com, there's Facebook. Those are probably like the 5 big ones. So probably check across the board, and put it in context. If a company has a 4.8 stars and over 100 reviews, that's pretty good. So if you see one bad review that says they're terrible, I couldn't sell my house after I got solar on it, ask yourself, is that something that's the solar company's fault? You had a hard time selling your house at the price that you asked. Maybe you asked for too much money to sell the house. So maybe I'm not going to blame the solar company for that. So, read the reviews, put it in context.
Sure. What about installation volume? Is there a way for people to understand, like, besides the reviews, how much experience a company has? Because you mentioned that there are things that can happen on the internet to inflate reviews, but is there a way to tell, like, how big is this company really? How much experience do they actually have? How many, go ahead.
So one of the things that somebody can ask is, and this ties into reviews, is give me a referral. Please give me the phone number of a happy customer that you have in a certain region. So you always want to ask, penetrating questions. You always want to ask, so you can look on the internet, you see, how many reviews somebody has, and you can see what their star rating is. But then you can ask your sales rep or whoever you're talking to, how many installations have you done? And if they say we've done 5,000, then you can say this: do you mind sending me a screenshot of your online monitoring platform showing me that that's how many systems you have? I think that number is very high. This is information that would be readily available to any solar company. So, we use SolarEdge, and on our SolarEdge, on the corporate dashboard, it says 1,100 installations, and we tell our customers we've done about 1,100 installations. Actually a few more, because there's projects that aren't monitored, or there's projects that are monitored with other inverter companies. But a company should be able to prove very easily how many installations they've done. And so then when you ask for referrals, you want to ask, can you give me one in my part of town? So if they say I've done 3,000 installations, say, how many have you done in Miami? Or I live in Denellen, what's the closest installation you've done to there? And try to meet real people that have nothing to gain from the sale, because they're going to be honest, and you want people that have experience with this company. And then also remember, they're giving you the people that they want you to talk to, and don't be shy to ask that person, real questions. How long did it take? Was everybody perfect? But by the way, this is construction. This is an industry where there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of tricky things. There's a lot of different roles. right? For example, for us, we have a site surveyor, we have technicians, we have warehouse people, we have project managers, we have delivery drivers, we have engineers, we have permit runners, we have accountants. There's a lot of people. You know, we can't expect everybody every day to be perfect all the time. We have to remember that we're human beings. And so a homeowner might say, you know, I had a leak on my roof, and it's unfortunate that it happened. But I called them, and they were there in an hour, and they were, you know, horrified. They felt terrible. They fixed it immediately, and they completely remedied the situation. So
that means a lot. Yep.
Always important to take things and put them in context. And you know, we have a very, very, very good track record, you know, on roof leaks, but you know, it's definitely happened 2 or 3 times, you know. And if any solar company ever said no, never happened to me, there's no way that's true. So you know, it's always good to say, well, if it happened, what would you do? How would you respond? So you want to make sure, because it's always important to remember anything can happen in construction, but you know, how responsive is the company? How likely are they to take ownership of things that happen? And one of, you know, we're going to talk about different things that people can check, and we're going to touch on a lot of these kind of things that somebody can, that a person considering going solar can do or know in advance before going in.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those. So it looks like on Solar Power World, it looks like you're actually able to see the relative volumes of top companies in Florida. Is that something that people should check out?
So that's a good point. That is something that people can check into. That's really a measure of one thing: how big is the company as a company? But there's a couple of things to keep in mind. This is self-reported numbers. So again, you want to take it with a grain of salt. I think it used to be self-reported, and then when we applied to be on the list, Solar Power World actually said, I need permit numbers for every single project that you're counting towards there with the number of kilowatts. So I think now it's pretty authentic. And so the list is not quality of the company, but strictly volume. How big are they? So they're asking, how many kilowatts did you install in 2019? How many kilowatts did you install in 2018? And then they're asking you, what is your primary market segment? And there's utility scale, which is, you know, your 5, 10, 20, 15, you know, megawatts, right? Utility scale goes by megawatts, not kilowatts. Then there's commercial, there's residential. So those are, I think, the 3 big ones. And so if a company's a mix, and a company reports 100 megawatts, but maybe they want, you know, they chose to write commercial, you know, you always want to kind of ask them, so how does that total break out between your different market segments? Because if you're a residential customer considering a company for residential purposes, you know, you want to deal with a company that does rooftop solar. That can be commercial, that can be residential, but you want their primary experience to be in rooftop solar.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. Can you talk a little bit about products and like what should people look for when they're looking for products? Like there are different inverters and different panels. How can people know if an installer is recommending products to them that they should be excited about?
Yeah. So here I recommend to the customers to really do their own homework on products, to really do their own research on products, to study their own knowledge on products, and then find the company that recommends those products that they're happy about. Beware of companies telling you this product's the best, only go with this. Because naturally, the contractor is going to speak very highly of the product that they use. And hopefully they don't speak, you know, illy of a product that they don't use unless it's, you know, really merited. But what I would say is do your own research on the products and then find a company that works with that product. So there's 4 categories of products. There's solar panels, which produce direct current out of sunlight. There's inverters that change direct current into alternating current. In other words, the power that the panels produce to the power that your home uses. There's racking, which is the skeleton of the system, holds it all together, locks it all up together. And then there's batteries, which are optional if you want to get batteries. You don't need batteries unless you want battery backup for the event of a power outage.
Mm-hmm.
So racking is something that's very important for people to know about in Florida because we have hurricanes. So racking is the structural equipment that keeps it all together. Solar panels are very important because obviously that's kind of the main, that's the star of the show. People get solar installations, not inverter installations, although solar installations have inverters. But the thing about solar panels that you want to look at is, are they a tier 1 panel? So tier 1 is a list. There's a list of tier 1 panels. It's surprisingly short. And surprisingly, a lot of panels that are excellent or that you would think very highly of are not on that list. Let me pull that list up. I'm not saying, what's that?
So let me pull that list up while you're referencing that.
Absolutely. So I'm not saying don't go with a panel that's not tier 1, but I'm saying be aware of whether it's a tier 1 or not a tier 1 panel. If a company's telling you go with this panel XYZ, it's the best one, and it's not on tier 1, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying that it doesn't have that very important characteristic, being on tier 1. So here it is, and it's a list of about 20 or so panels.
What is the criteria for something being a tier 1 panel?
Off my memory, it's the quality of the panel. Is the company vertically integrated? Okay, what does that mean, vertically integrated? That means that they do everything that's needed for the manufacturing of solar panels. In other words, do they manufacture their own cells, or do they buy cells and encapsulate them and then sell them? So a vertically integrated company would do everything. They'd make their own frames, they'd make their own cells, they'd make their own, electronics, their own junction boxes, and they would really be kind of like the one-stop shop. Other companies are not. And so one of the things that you want to be wary about there is is a company that's really just big on branding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a company that, to the end user is a solar panel company, but they buy cells. They buy the 6-inch by 6-inch photovoltaic cell. They bring them into their manufacturing plant, and then they assemble panels with somebody else's cells. There's a lot of reasons for companies to want to do that. One of them is, for example, to be able to say made in the USA, mm-hmm. even if the cell is not. So the cells will be imported, then the panels will be assembled in the USA. So one of the criteria of the tier 1 list is, was it made in the, is it vertically integrated? Another piece of the criteria is the financial health of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we care about the financial health of the company?
Because of the warranties.
That's it. That's primarily it. It's we get a 25-year warranty from a company. Don't we want to know that that company is going to be around for 25 years? For sure. For sure.
Yeah. I see this here, Goldin Solar. This is a pretty close brand name to Goldin Solar. That's funny.
I never even noticed that. Never even heard of them. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of the companies here, we're very proud to say that we use Hanwha Q cell. So that's our panels. They've pretty much been really consistently on this list. But a lot of companies that you'd think are obviously one of the best, you might be surprised to find out that they're not on the list. So some of the other things that you want to think about with solar panels, and I think I talked about this on our podcast when we talked about how to read a panel spec sheet. So you might want to link to that when we post this video, is what are the structural characteristics of the solar panel? And that is, in Florida, you want to make sure that your panel is rated for 4,000 pascals uplift. In other words, upward pressure, also known as suction or negative pressure, which is really when the wind wants to suck the glass right out of the frame. You want to make sure that that's rated for 4,000 pascals or better. Industry standard is 2,400. And because we have hurricanes in South Florida, that's something that's particularly important. The other thing is, I recommend for rooftop solar only installing 60 cell panels. So a cell is a standard size. A cell is 6-inch by 6-inch, something about that big. A 60 cell panel is going to be 6 cells wide, 10 cells high. The other popular size is 72 cell panels, which are 6 cells wide and 12 cells high.
I'm just pulling up a spec sheet here for you, just so we can kind of show while you're talking about.
Perfect.
Is this a good one to bring up here? I got the G6 330 to 345.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great one. So what you're seeing here is, 5,400 Pascal snow load and 4,000 Pascal wind load. You just had it. You scrolled away.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. It's right there. Yeah, there it is. So the wind loading is very, very important. And this is a 60 cell panel. And so the way that you can see that is, I think if you scroll down, it should say that it's a 60 cell panel somewhere here. One of the things that you want to make sure of is that it's a 60 cell panel. Now, obviously the efficiency is very important, and that's generally expressed, in terms of like a percentage of efficiency, but really to the end user, they'll interpret it as what's the number of watts that the panel's rated for. Obviously more efficient panels, more watts. But this is why I say this in the context of make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, make sure that you're comparing a 60 cell panel to a 60 cell panel. And one thing that companies love to confuse people with is if we present a 340 watt 60 cell panel, somebody else might, present a 380 watt panel. And so 380 obviously is better than 340, right? The answer is not necessarily, because that panel might be 72 cell. So it's not more efficient, it's just bigger.
Right.
So that's something that you want to be very wary of. So we recommend 60 cell panels because they're stronger. And in South Florida, that's very important. So we're building things that are going to be, resilient for our particular climate, for our wind conditions. So I recommend only 60 cell panels. And then you want to make sure that that 60 cell panel is rated for 4,000 Pascals or better. And then if you want to scroll up a little bit, show the photo of the panel. Also very important is the aesthetics. And what kind of became prevailing in the solar industry is a panel that's all black. It's just attractive. So you got a black frame, you got a black cell, you got a black back sheet. It looks cool, instead of the industrial looking aluminum frame and the blue cells and a white back sheet where you see all the lines between the cells. If you have a system that's going to be visible, then you care about how it looks. So that's kind of, to me, some of the key things to look at in a panel.
I see here that this has this is basically 120 half cells, which is the equivalent of a 60 cell panel. So that's if people are looking at spec sheets, you can notice that this is 120 half cells. The other thing I noticed about this panel is the warranty here, which I think the panels that we provide are a 25-year product warranty and a 25-year performance warranty. But can you talk a little bit about the warranty quality, what the difference is there between those?
Yeah. So for us, depending on if it's a G6 or a G7, the G6 panels have a 12 and 25. The G7 have a 25 and 25. There are two parts to a solar panel warranty. There's the product warranty, which, like any other product, is how long will I have it before it starts to fail. So it's warranted to not fail either for 12 years or 25 years, depending on if it's G6 or G7. And the other part is the linear performance warranty. That's industry standard. Everybody's going to have a 25-year linear performance warranty, but that being said, they're not all created equally. And so if you want to scroll down here a little bit, linear performance warranty, and just kind of zoom in on that graph, acknowledges that panels naturally degrade. That means that every year they're going to produce a little bit less and a little bit less. But the question of the performance warranty is by how much do they degrade? And what QCell in this warranty is certifying is that after the first year, they'll degrade by no more than 0.54% per year. Not 5.4, 0.54% per year. And so that works out to 85% of its, 93.1% of its nominal power rating at the end of year 10, and then 85% of its nominal power rating at the end of year 25. So it's basically how slow will it degrade, and this is really one of the best in the industry. Other panels basically work out to about 80% at the end of year 25. So you're looking at what's the power rating of the panel, and that's what did it flash test as it was coming off of the assembly line, and then you're saying how long will my panels stay, highly productive. So that's what the performance warranty, guarantee is about.
Yeah, that's a great thing to be able to dig into, because as you're shopping, I think you want to be able to distinguish. It may be easy for a salesperson to tell you it has a 25-year warranty,
sure.
but you want to make sure that it has a 25-year product and production warranty. And if it has the 25-year production warranty, what is it actually warranted to? Is it 85%? Is it 80%? Different panels could guarantee less than 85% after 25 years. So that's a good tip to have in your back pocket, I think.
That's right.
Cool.
That's right.
What about inverters? Do you want to talk some about that aspect of product?
Yeah, for sure. And this is a perfect segue, because if you have a panel production guarantee, you have to make sure that you have the tools to observe the performance at the individual panel level. And so there's two types of inverters that you can get that allow you to observe the performance at the individual panel level, and it's a microinverter or a DC optimized inverter. We recommend the latter. We recommend DC power optimized inverter. In particular, Solar Edge is the inverter that we use. And so that means that there's a device at each and every individual solar panel that allows you to monitor and track how the individual panels are doing. And without that ability, if you only have a central inverter, also known as a string inverter, then you can't see how the individual components are doing, only the system as a whole. And if you're only looking at the system as a whole, then how are you going to call out the panel manufacturer if you have a warranty issue at an individual panel? So, those two things go hand in hand. And so maybe you can, pull up Solar Edge and kind of show what panel level monitoring looks like. But yeah, the other major component of the system, now that we've talked about panels, is the inverter. And that's the device that's going to change DC to AC. And it's also the brains of the system. And it's also one of the things that has a lot of, that affects a lot of the total yield of the system. Because depending on the efficiency and depending on the flexibility of the inverter system, that'll really dictate how much power you get out of it.
Can I pull up yours?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You want to pull up my house and show it as an example? Definitely.
Yeah, give me just a second. Last time I pulled flash everybody's addresses up on the screen, so I'll get yours pulled up here. Let's see. Yeah, and I think once you see the monitoring, it really, for me, it brought a lot of peace of mind when I was shopping for solar, because it's such an open-ended thing to put all these panels on your roof and know if they're working. But to be able to see each one at the panel level on a daily basis, it makes it feel a lot more manageable, I think.
Yeah.
Let me see here. All right, here's your system. Cool, I'm going to share my screen here. So yeah, here's really what we're talking about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go back to the dashboard, then you can see a drone photo of the system, and you can really see how the layout and the system really go hand in hand. And so this is so simple, anybody can understand this. These are color coded. So not only do they say on the panel the number of kilowatt hours that the individual panel produced, they're also color coded. So there's a drop down, and you can change the time segment, the time length, of how much time you're looking at the panel level production. And you can look at it in 15-minute increments. So if you want, then go ahead and just change the daily to weekly. And as soon as you hit the show playback button, what the panel shows changes from energy to power, because it's changing from showing you the total accumulated energy over a certain duration of time, if it's a day or week or month, to showing power, which is an instantaneous value in terms of watt, as opposed to energy, which is watt hours or kilowatt hours. But now we're seeing the timeline running across the screen and it's showing us how much power was produced at every individual solar panel at different points of time. So 6 in the morning gets brighter and brighter and brighter. It peaks at noon, and then the sun starts to set.
Yeah.
So number one, this is very, very important to have, to be able to call out the panel manufacturer if you're having issues at the individual panel. In other words, it's lovely to have a 25-year power production guarantee, but you really only get to use that if you know that you need to call out the manufacturer if there's an issue. And that's why we pair Solar Edge with that amazing guarantee. The other
Looks
aspect,
like you had a good week for solar here.
What's that?
It looks like you had a good week for solar here.
Unbelievable week. Yeah. It's no rain, nice long hours. We're about a week and a half after the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. So it's been a beautiful day it's a beautiful week for solar for sure. Yeah,
and this
great
is pretty
day.
cool here that you can see it we're like halfway through the afternoon, and you can see here it basically looks like we're halfway. It's pretty realistic.
Exactly. So what I was showing here is that it's color coded. So when you're at night, then it just shows zeros on everything. They're black. Black means that they're not producing anything. And then when you're at midday, they're kind of like a bright blue. And then when you're on the beginning of the day or the tail end of the day, it'll be sort of a darker blue. And what they did here is that they made the panels color coded relative to each other. And so you don't have to be a statistician. You don't have to go into Excel and plug in a bunch of numbers into spreadsheets to see what's producing what, and is everything within a 95% interval. And you don't have to do that. Just look at the colors of the panels. It's that simple. If one of them is black and all the rest of them are blue, then there's something up with that panel, and maybe it needs to be serviced.
Right. Could be shade, or it could be that the panel is messed
up.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so the other thing that's neat about that is, you can kind of use your head and sort of put it in context and understand if it is shade or if there is an issue. And the way that you could know that is, let's say, for example, I had a tree on, so north is always up. That's how we always design them. North is up, east is right, south is west, south is down, and left is west. If I had a tree, let's say on the southwest corner of my solar array, then if you want to just grab your mouse cursor and just kind of show like where that would be, let's say on the southwest corner of the solar array.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, let's say the tree would be like just a little further southwest of there. Like, let's say there, exactly. I would know that I shouldn't have any shade in the morning, and I would be worried about maybe I'll have shade in the afternoon. In other words, when in the afternoon the sun is going to be further west of the obstruction, it's going to send a shadow out into the east, and it's going to hit some of those panels on the southeast corner. I have full visibility into that. And so one thing is, knowing if I have a service issue, and then, our customers call us, we go out, we take care of the panel that's problematic. But the other thing about it is that, it helps us know if we need to do some shading mitigation around the panels. And to what extent? Maybe only 2 panels have a shade only for a few hours, and maybe it's more costly to call the tree trimmer out there to do it. But we're keeping an eye on it to be able to make the judgment call. When it gets bad, then we'll call them.
I think the other thing that's obvious from looking at this is that all these panels are able to produce their optimum amount of energy independent of each other. So when you're looking for a solar contractor and you're trying to qualify their products, it's important to know that you can get panels that can be optimized independently, in addition to be able to see the monitoring at the panel level. And I think that's a big thing that Goldin tries to focus on educating people about is that, you want them to be individually optimized, and you want to be able to have them be individually monitored as well.
Correct. So individual panel optimization, comes down to a term known as MPPT, which is a maximum power point tracker. Okay, we want to get the maximum power that we can out of a panel. Electrically speaking, power is the product of voltage and current. So if you multiply voltage times current, you get power. And panels operate on something called an IV curve, where I is current and V is voltage. And they can produce power at different amounts of voltage and current. But there's one point along this curve that results in the maximum power. and it's known as the maximum power point, and that is a certain amount of current times a certain amount of voltage, that when you multiply those two have the maximum power. And what Solar Edge does with having power optimizers is having maximum power point tracking at the individual panel level. In other words, each panel is optimized to perform its own best power, and then it's added up, as opposed to a string inverter that has a maximum power point tracker at the string level, which means a string of, let's say, 10 or 15 panels are producing at a certain voltage and a certain current that results in the best power for the whole average. Or not really average, but the best power for all panels combined. And maybe that's not the best for panels individually. So all of them have to just fit onto that line. But when you have the maximum power point tracker at the panel level, the total ends up being higher. And the analogy that I like to give here is, let's say that you have 10 people trying to run a mile. And you tell them, we're going to tie you guys all up together, and everybody should run at the fastest that you can collectively. Okay, the group of people are going to run as fast as the slowest runner. Also, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. But then you say, all right, we're going to cut the cable, and everybody runs at the speed that they're most effective in, at the speed that they're most efficient in. Then you're going to sum up the times. Those times will be better than the time that everybody finished together times the time of the number of people that there are. That's what power optimizers are about. They're about making the individual components work at their own peak performance capabilities.
So if you're looking for an installer, they may be plugging microinverters as well, because with a microinverter, you can do something similar, which is, have that panel level optimization and monitoring. But what's the case to be made for why you'd want to go with an installer offering Solar Edge versus microinverters?
Right. So microinverters are different from power optimizers because they take the function of an inverter, they break them down, they put them on an individual panel level. They do also have maximum power point tracking at the panel level. To me, it just comes down to like reliability. There's about 500 parts inside a microinverter. There's about 180 parts in a power optimizer. And to me, there's just a lot more that can go wrong when you have that many parts. Anybody in engineering will tell you, if you can accomplish something with a simple machine or accomplish something with a very complicated machine, simpler is better. And simpler is more reliable. Almost reminds me of the Rube Goldberg machine. There's so many parts. I give the analogy of, to me, microinverters on panels, in my opinion, is similar to having an engine on every wheel. Well, anybody that's ever driven, a car has had to do all sorts of things to take care of their engines. They know a lot of parts means a lot of things that can go wrong. And so you take all those problems that you have by having one engine, and then you multiply them by 4, and now you're servicing parts on the engine that you have for every wheel. To me, that's what it's like to have microinverters. So I'd rather achieve what was achieved by microinverters, which is panel level tracking, panel level optimization, but with a much more simplified, much more streamlined device. And then the inverter, there's still a central inverter. It then is on a wall in the shade, not under a panel, which is, really harsh conditions, high temperatures, high humidity if you're in Florida, high salinity if you're by the ocean. Yeah.
Very cool. What about so that was a pretty good deep dive into do you want to talk about racking at all? We talked about panels and about inverters. We talked a little bit about racking.
I think maybe it'd be better if you just kind of put the link when we post this to the video that we talked about it for an hour. But basically, because we live in Florida, the racking is actually very important. And it's the kind of thing that you're never going to think about until it's way too late. If there's a hurricane and your system gets ripped to pieces, then you're going to ask the question, which racking did I have? Which racking should I have used? It's one of those things. It's like a seatbelt. You might just not put it on, but wish you did. But at that point, it's really just way too late. So we use Snap and Rack. It's one of the strongest rail profiles that exists. And we're very proud of using that. That's the kind of thing that we know to use because we're a company run by engineers, because we're coming to the table with background in structural engineering. And then of course you want to make sure that the rail is equipped with a standard called UL 2703, which means that all the metallic parts are all bonded together so that everything that's metal is grounded. So if anything's struck by lightning, or if there's any rogue current on the wires from the solar system, it can travel safely to the ground. So 2703, and definitely check the racking. I mean, if nothing else, ask the contractor what racking they're planning to use, and then do your research. If the contractor's answer is, I have no idea, that's not important, then you want to be concerned. But if they tell you a brand of racking, at the very least, you can make sure that if that brand of racking has multiple lines, that you're getting the strongest one. It makes sense to me that a racking company makes different products for different conditions. You don't always need the most beefed up rail if you're not in Florida. You could be in a place that doesn't have hurricanes. And maybe it makes sense there to have a really flimsy rail. Obviously, the price of the rail is going to have a lot to do with the amount of material that went into it. So a heavier gauge rail, I mean a thicker walled rail, is going to cost more money. And so you want to make sure that your contractor is not cutting corners by going with the cheapest, flimsiest rail, which might have been fine in another state. But because we're in Florida, you really do want a heavy duty product.
For sure. What about if we were going to talk about the ownership of the country? I mean, the ownership of the company. I know that we can look at some information on SunBiz and be able to look at licenses and stuff like that. I think a lot of times,
I want to tie this into two things.
Okay.
The first one is, what's the ideal company size for you to do business with?
Okay.
Because company sizes range tremendously, all the way from like the one-stop shop we like to nickname Dan with the van, which is the owner is the installer, is the engineer, and the salesperson, and you talk to them, and they're going to be up there on your roof and installing, and there's merits to a very, very, very small company. By the way, that was us in our first couple of years. I sold my own systems. I was up on the roof with my team installing them. I was managing the projects. I was critically reviewing the engineering before we sent it to permitting. So that's one company size. The other is the national conglomerate, which is the nationwide company doing thousands of installations every month. And that has its merits. And then company sizes come in everywhere in between. If somebody asked me what I would recommend, I'd say the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. And the reason is, in the same way that you want your solar panel company to be around for 15 years, you want to make sure that your installer is around for 15, 25 years to service the systems that they've installed. And from my experience, in my opinion, the companies that are most suited to be around for a very long time are the middleweight class companies. And the reason is, any company that's really small, as in, a 5-person operation or even a 10-person operation, they probably just started. So they haven't passed the test of time. And there's a lot of volatility there. They could not sell deals for a couple of weeks, and that would be a real problem for them. And the same is true for a massive company that has offices all around the country and installs thousands of systems. They have a certain amount of overhead based on fulfilling a certain amount of volume. And if there's market conditions that cause that volume to dip, then there's massive swings and there's a massive amount of overhead to carry. And they might fold in bad market conditions. So somebody that's a midweight company, somebody that's a localized company, in my opinion, has a lot more resilience to market shifts. They've stood the test of time. They've expanded to get to a certain size company. So they have that, reliability. So to me, companies of, 30 to 80 people is really a nice size there. They're small enough to be able to, weather, something like coronavirus. And they're big enough to really be able to take care of you. They're big enough to really stood the test of time. They probably have their own service department. If you hire a 5-person operation, they don't have a service department. For them, service might mean, not installing for a day on another project and then going to service that project. But what happens when they have 100 systems installed and now they're popping up for service now they have to change their organization. Now they need a dedicated service. So, when you find a middleweight class company, they've already figured all those things out and they're not too big to do anything. The other thing here is, the cliche, if you're at a restaurant or you don't like the way something's going, you say, can I talk to the manager? If you ever asked to talk to the manager, it's because you were frustrated with the interaction with the person that you were talking to, whether that's a clerk or a waiter or what have you. If you said, I want to talk to the manager ever, or heard the term, it's because somebody wanted to talk to somebody higher up with more executive ability. So you want to know, as a consumer, early on, before you get into a contract, do you have access to the proverbial manager? Do you have access to hire people up in the company to be able to take care of things if you ever get frustrated with the people you're talking to? Also, it'll give you some sense. You want to make sure you understand the organization you're talking to. And if you're talking to a salesperson, if you're talking to a salesperson, you want to make sure that you understand what their role in the business is. You want to make sure that you understand what that looks like.
So that if they're promising something that's beyond,
you want to know what that context is. If a salesperson tells you, I'm giving you a 30-year warranty, don't worry, it's on me. Are they authorized to make that promise?
Is it in the contract?
Is it in the contract? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to be able to do that. And so one way for a customer to understand, do I have access to the manager, the so-called manager, is the principles of the company. And so somebody can always go into SunBiz, is going into SunBiz.
I'm going to follow along if I can here.
Yeah. And you can do a business search.
Can I just look? I'm going to just look for Goldin Solar here.
Yep.
Cool. Let's see. Search records, search by name. And then I'm just going to put in Goldin Solar. Oh, look, it popped up. Goldin Solar LLC. Okay.
This is cool. Public information, so anybody can go here. Mm-hmm. And so you scroll through and you see who the name of the principals are, and the folks that are running it are myself, Daren Goldin, and Joe Cataldo, my business partner. Does a customer have access to these people? And I would say yes, absolutely. My cell phone is up on the internet, and that's because I want my customers to make sure that if they ever have an issue, they can get a hold of me directly and they can talk to me, because it's very important to me to solve any issues. We want happy customers. We don't view this as a one and done transaction where permits closed, systems on, got my final payment, adios. That's not how we roll. We want to stay in touch with our customers. We want them to understand that they can call on us if they ever have any issues with the system. We want to be a place where they can send their referrals when they're inevitably going to have friends and family that are seeing how happy they are with their service and are going to want to get solar systems on their homes. So that's... Can
you talk about how that ties into who holds the licenses for the company?
Exactly. So what you just saw in SunBiz is the business registration. That's how the business is registered with the state of Florida. But SunBiz doesn't give licenses. SunBiz gives a federal tax, or SunBiz requires a federal tax ID. In other words, SunBiz requires it to be like a valid, legitimate corporation. But licenses, and this is true for every license in Florida, happens through the DBPR, which is the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. And they have the Construction Industry Licensing Board. They have licensing for bars and restaurants. They have licenses for, you name it, it happens through here. And you want to ask a couple of very, very critical questions. Number one, is the company that I'm talking to licensed to perform the work that they are trying to sell me? And if the answer to that question is no, run for the hills. Okay, licensing isn't a feather in the cap. Licensing is a prerequisite. So they absolutely have to have a license. And so you can go into DBPR, you can search by name, then you want to search by organization name. So you're showing the example here. And what we have is licenses. We're active, all three of, so do they have a license? Is it active? And then what are their licenses? So in our case, we have an electrical license, we have a solar license, and we have a roofing license. In Florida, if you want to do solar, you have to have a solar license and an electrical license. So the solar license allows you to do some roofing work around the solar attachments incidental to the solar system, allows you to do some electrical work basically on the DC side all the way up to the inverter. And then you need an electrical license to do the interconnection. That's in the state of Florida. Alternatively, you can have an electrical license and a roofing license. So with the electrical license, you can do the interconnection. You can do all the electrical work up on the DC side, but you need a roofer to do the attachments if there's no solar license. So those are the combinations. You can have a solar and electrical, or you can have electrical and roofing. So we have all three, and that's because we are, run by companies, by individuals that really understand our craft. So it's not required that all three of these licenses are here, but we have them, and that's something that we're very proud of. We want our customers to understand we do have roofing expertise, we do have solar expertise, we do have electrical expertise. The construction industry is complicated. There can always be surprises. Things can always come up. And so it's really important that that expertise in the areas that things can come up is present to know how to address something. So one of the things here is, when the solar industry grew so fast, now there's so many companies. Is that company really, just like we said about solar panels, vertically integrated? And by vertically integrated, I mean, is the same company that's selling it going to be the same company that's performing the work? And are they going to be performing all the work? Or are they subbing? Are they not subbing? We contractually actually do reserve the right to subcontract, but the only reason that we do that is because sometimes we do, concrete piers underground. We do some tile work. If we're doing like a carport or a gazebo or solar, some specialty products. But for our regular solar installation, which is a rooftop or a ground mount and battery backup, we're not going to sub anything out. Everything's going to be performed 100% in-house by our own W-2 employees. And that's a way for somebody to know that the work is going to be performed by individuals that are W-2 employees of a licensed company, and that they have workman's compensation. So one thing that unfortunately other companies like to do is they fly under the radar because they do pull permits, but the company that pulled the permit is a third party that has nothing to do with the site. And then the work is going to be performed by other people that they call themselves subcontractors. But if somebody's a subcontractor, they actually have to, they're required by law to have a license to perform that work. So let's say that there's a licensed solar company, they sell the contract, they pull the permit, then they hire a different LLC to do the installation. That's only legitimate if that other company that they hired as a subcontractor also holds a license to perform that work. And that's the kind of thing that can fly under the radar, because really what building departments are looking at is, was a permit pulled? Some inspectors that are very savvy will ask the individual at the home while they're doing the inspection, who do you work for? And the answer to that question better be the company that pulled the permit. And they better be a W-2 employee of that company. So this is a way for a homeowner, the DBPR is a way for a homeowner to see, do they have all the licensing that's required? And frankly, I would recommend making sure that they have solar, electrical, and roofing. Why not? Why wouldn't you make sure that somebody really has all their bases covered if you can, given that a solar installation really does involve solar, electrical, and roofing? And then number two is, who are those individuals that are licensed? are they the same people that are principals of the company?
So how can I see that? I just look on here under name.
So like click on the solar license. Yeah, which is this one, which is the one I think that you clicked. So over here, this is the licensee. This is the individual holding the license. And that's me. I'm holding the license. And so let's say that you're considering a different company to do your solar installation, and you looked up the manager on the SunBiz, and you know that that's somebody that you can talk to, so you feel good about that. You know that you can talk to the higher ups if something ever went bad. But then you looked on the DBPR and you saw the license, and that person that's the manager is nowhere near there, and the name of the license holder. You know, you should be able to ask your salesperson, can I talk to that person? And you should be able to talk to that person, and you should be able to ask them, how involved are you with the project? How involved are you with the operations of the company? And that individual that's the license holder better tell you every aspect of the operation I'm involved in. Product selection, means and methods, construction supervision, I'm involved in all of it. Because that's the point of a license holder. It's to make sure that the project is being installed in accordance with code.
Yeah. Got it.
So in our case, I'm the qualifier of our company for solar. We have another qualifier for electrical, another qualifier for roofing, and they're very involved with our day-to-day operation. We consult with them daily on our means and methods.
How can you tell if the people that are actually going to be on your roof, like what their situation is? Like how can you tell if they belong to the company or if they have workman's comp, or you know what their details are?
So the first thing is, you can always ask the contractor for a copy of the workman's comp certificate. And this is somewhere that you can be very sure that you dodge a bullet if the thing that they hand you is a workman's compensation exemption. Then you definitely want to be very weary of that. So let me explain what that is. For a contractor to pull a permit, we have to be registered with the local building department. And what the building departments require in the registration process is a license, in other words, to be state certified, or at least a local competency certificate, which is, you know, you don't see that very often, but it's a localized version of a license. But we're state certified, meaning you can do business anywhere in Florida. So it's first of all a license, i.e. your state certification. Second of all, your general liability insurance. And then your workman's compensation insurance, or a workman's compensation insurance exemption, and a local business tax receipt. Those four things. Now, most people are going to have workman's comp insurance. The only reason anybody would have workman's comp exemption is if they are a company that is a sole proprietorship and that they will also be performing the work themselves. If they're performing the work themselves, they can have a workman's comp exemption. And the reason is, the point of workman's comp is to make sure that the company pays their workers you know, their medical bills and some lost wages should they get injured on the job. Well, if somebody is a one-person company, they're not going to sue themselves. So there is such a thing as a workman's comp exemption for either the owner or owners of the company. But you know, really the intent there is that nobody else is on that job installing, because anybody that's on a job installing needs to have workman's comp. Again, the only exception is if it's a one-person operation. But I can't imagine a scenario of where a solar project would be getting installed by one person. It takes multiple people to install solar. So, you know, I would recommend to my customers, ask for a copy of the workman's comp certificate. And if they hand you a workman's comp exemption, that should be a red flag. Not saying that anybody with workman's comp exemptions can't operate legitimately. They can. I mean, if you're hiring an electrician just to do something that really a one-person company, if it really is a one-person company and the owner is doing it themselves, fine. But in solar, I'm not that comfortable with that kind of thing. And then you know, you can ask the company to prove to you, ask them who are the individuals that are going to be installing my system, and ask them, can you please show me, your payroll that just shows that those people are W-2 employees of your company.
Mm.
And if somebody asks me of that, I tell them, somebody said to me, I want to know the names of the people that are going to be installing on my house. And I'd say, okay, it's, person ABC. And then the next question is, can you please prove to me that they're W-2 employees of your company? In other words, prove to me that it's not subcontracted. And so I would provide it. I may cross out their wages because frankly, that's private information and nobody should have to share that, but it's reasonable to prove to, a homeowner that the individuals that are going to be on their roof are on payroll as W-2 employees. Because again, a W-2 employee, as distinctive from an independent contractor, means that they're on your workman's comp. And that's very important.
For the homeowner, what are some of the benefits for having people on the roof that are on workman's comp? Is that just an indicator?
If they get injured, they're going to be taken care of with their workman's comp policy. Alternatively, if the person's injured, they can sue the homeowner, and who knows? Unfortunately and sadly, we live in a litigious society. And so sadly, if somebody gets injured, they can try to say, I slipped, it was unsafe conditions, For a homeowner to know that the company that has workman's comp, they know that they're protected because the workman's comp policy will protect the installer, both for their medical costs and for some lost wages in the event that they're injured on a job. So that's very, very, very important.
What about liability insurance held by the contractor? Is that another part of the puzzle?
Right. So general liability insurance, and a homeowner can even ask for proof of their automobile policy, because obviously the installers are going to be showing up on the project with their own vehicles. So I would say that a savvy owner, a savvy homeowner asking or about to get into a contract with a contractor can say, please send me your certificate of insurance. I want to understand your liability limits. Please send me proof of your workman's comp insurance. Please send me the names of the individuals that are going to be working on my project, and send me your automobile insurance policy. And then they can proceed knowing that they're going to be protected if anything happens, and it's the kind of thing that's associated with a legitimate company.
Right.
It's just another thing to know. Check. Yes, it is their own employees, and yes, they are not subcontracting. So it's a great way to weed out companies that might be selling to you a system, presenting themselves as the company that's going to be doing it, but really subcontracting it. And really, what does that make them? That just makes them a sales and marketing company. And to me, that just means that the project is just unnecessarily being marked up.
Another middle person, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that, for me, as I'm imagining being that homeowner that's got to shop through all of these kind of points of diligence, it kind of highlights the reason of working with an established company that has an established track record and is of the size where it would be more likely that they would be doing all of their own work. Some of the smaller companies, I think it would be more difficult potentially to keep an in-house installation crew. But once you get into the tier that Goldin Solar's in, I think, it makes a lot more sense for one of these companies to be more likely to do their own work and to, be responsible for their own work.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any other thoughts that could help a homeowner who's trying to decide? I mean, one of the things that comes up for me, like, this is just very, very simple, is kind of like the cheapest surgeon you hear people talk about.
Yeah.
Certainly there's a spectrum of prices for going solar, and like, how can homeowners understand when they're paying an unnecessary markup versus when they're paying for a company to do the job correctly and stand behind their work? That's one of the most basic, I think, things to try to decide as a shopper. I don't want the cheapest surgeon. I don't want to pay unnecessary markup.
Right, exactly. So look, a lot of times things are about finding the sweet spot. And in the same way that I said that there's a sweet spot in terms of organization size, there's a sweet spot on price.
Hmm.
So here's the challenge for somebody buying solar. They've probably never bought a solar system before. And this is an area that's altogether kind of abstract. And what I mean by that is when we sell solar, we have to explain kilowatts that are going on the roof in terms of system size and kilowatt or watt rating of panels. We have to explain kilowatt hours, which is the yield. In other words, how much energy the system is going to produce. So kilowatts is power, kilowatt hours is energy. And that by itself is very abstract to most people, because energy equals power times time. And then people come back and say, well, you telling me that power and energy aren't the same thing? That's right. Power and energy are not the same thing. So there's a lot of education that goes on with solar. And, there's a little bit of a risk that's taken by the homeowner when they sign up, because really their decision to buy solar was all based on the economic model. This is how much money I'm going to spend, or this is how much money I'm going to borrow, and this is my monthly payment. And this is how much money I expect to save on an average month. And when do they get proof of that? When the system's powered on. By the time the system's powered on, really the whole transaction is done. So they have to make sure that they're really comfortable with all the assumptions, and that they're comfortable with understanding all the assumptions, and that they've verified everything before they've gotten that far. So do your homework, definitely learn the technical terms. Even find a third party that can do the energy assessment calculation. So there's I think it's called PV Watts. There's a website called PV Watts that you can put in the system size in terms of kilowatts. You can put in the location, the tilt, the orientation, and maybe other site conditions. And it'll calculate the amount of energy that you can expect the system to produce. I think you just put in an address in there. I don't remember, but yeah, this is a website that's provided by NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And so this is really created by them, and it's really intended for the end user. It's intended to be a resource for the end user to be able to do their own assessments. And I'm not saying that two different assessments are going to be exactly right, but they should be within a reasonable range of each other. And so this is what it says. It says, how many kilowatts are you putting in? Well, you can find out how many kilowatts has my contractor proposed that I put in. What type of module? Go ahead and click that. We can talk through this real quick. Standard, premium. Yeah, we'll go standard. So again, this was made to be simplified.
Right.
This wasn't designed to be complicated. The experts have their own tools. This is designed to be very accessible to the end user. So it's not, homeowners are not going to get a tracking system. Percentage loss, that default 14 is pretty reasonable. I'd consider even going up to 20, but you can leave the defaults. So your panels are tilted to the south, 180 degree azimuth, at 20 degrees. It's a 10 kilowatt system. And yep, so you even have a chart that explains the azimuth.
Right.
It's a residential system. You can go ahead and change the energy price to 12 cents to make it reflective of a Florida energy price. And then you can, go ahead and calculate. And look at how amazing this is. In 5 clicks, you found out how many kilowatt hours that's AC energy, monthly AC energy, the system will produce. And so if you talk to a contractor and they told, I think you did a 10 kilowatt.
Yep.
If you talk to a contractor and they told you a 10 kilowatt system is going to save you $250 a month, but then you went to NREL and you ran your own math and found that the average is probably more like 140, then you're able. Then you had your own verification. So
right.
This will tell you energy production, which is by extension energy savings. It's the principle of a dollar saved is a dollar earned. Whatever energy your solar system produced itself is energy you didn't have to buy from your utility. That's the savings that you've essentially applied towards the cost of your system.
Yeah, and this is interesting here. They're including, some level of detail here. They're trying to estimate how much solar you're going to get in your area at your address, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And then how much energy that system is going to produce from that solar radiation.
Yep.
And then the dollar value. So this really, I think, is a easy way for people to get in the ballpark and know if they're getting taken for a ride or if the company is, and it's all an estimation, right? So it's not going to be exact numbers.
But the ballpark is key. So if you want to just go back one, people shouldn't be scared. I mean, there's literally 10 fields. So the kilowatt, that's just whatever the kilowatt is of the proposal. By the way, the kilowatts is the number of panels times the watts per panel. And then just convert from watts to kilowatts, just divide by 1,000. So if you have 30 panels that are 300 watts, 30 times 300 equals 9,000, which divide by 1,000 is 9 kilowatts. So the number of panels times the watts per panel divided by 1,000 to go from watts to kilowatts. Module type, probably just keep in standard. Array, it's going to be fixed. You're not building, the axis tracking is really for a solar farm. System losses, I would just recommend keeping the default there. I would really recommend keeping the default there. 14 is pretty safe. By the way, you can make the adjustments. Cancel out of that, and you can make adjustments to the tilt and azimuth. That's basically the tilt and magnetic orientation of the system. So 180 is south. By the way, you hit the information. It explained that if you're not familiar with how that works. Residential, and then feel free to Google what the average residential energy rate is in my utility. Yeah. Google should be able to answer that pretty easily. And so that's what the savings is going to be based on. So we're saying how much energy is it going to produce? How much money is that energy worth?
And if you know how much energy you use, you can kind of use this to match up, how much energy it's going to produce. You can see on an annual basis and know if they're sizing it correctly for you.
That's right.
So you want to aim for net zero. And I think, one of the things that I've seen is that the level of diligence is an important indicator for how quality of a job the contractor is trying to do for you. If they're comfortable just kind of picking a general number, it's too big of an investment, in my opinion, to not really try to get as specific as possible. There is still always a level of estimation in this process, but the more variables you can explore and try to nail down, the more accurately you can try to size your investment. And for those who are familiar with net metering, you'll know that if you produce more energy than you need, it's not necessarily a good thing. You want to try to aim for zero. And so having that level of diligence from a contractor, I think, is a good way to tell pretty early on how much time they're willing to give you and how important it is to them that your system is successful. And this can give you a way to just make sure that they're at least in the ballpark, but your experience with them and their process can be telling too, I think.
It's an economic model to go solar. And so, you want to make sure that the contractor is as honest and comprehensive and as accurate as possible. Yeah. Because you're making a big commitment and you want to make it based on, full understanding of what it is that you're committing to and based on very realistic and very accurate numbers. Yeah. And, sadly, unfortunately, there are companies out there that tilt the data in their favor to maybe make the deal sweeter than it is. Mm-hmm. Nobody is going to become a millionaire going solar, saving $20, $30 a month. If anybody tells you that you're going to cut your bill in half relative to the finance bill, that's probably unlikely. I mean, the results we see is usually about 15, 20% savings. But, to me, saving 15% is still a very attractive prospect. Because you're still taking ownership over your own energy production. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, cool. I think this would make me feel a lot more comfortable. I remember when I was shopping for solar, just the hardest part was knowing, like, are these people, taking me for a ride? I have no way of understanding all the factors that go into this calculation. But having a third-party calculator, I think, helps to just know that they're trying to give you an honest answer. Because we've seen examples where some companies don't. We've definitely seen examples where other companies have given our customers, before they were our customers, misleading proposals, which is sad. And it's kind of ridiculous when you look at it, because like this is easy for people to go and check. This is a good thing for you to hold yourself to checking, for the size of investment that it is.
But see, most people don't know how to do this, and that's why we're here showing this, because we really do benefit very well from educated customers. So we really do want our customers to understand the data and understand how to find the information themselves, because we want to help protect customers against people that are going to overpromise, the production. And like I mentioned earlier, really the customer says, I'm spending this and I'm going to save this. And they don't get to find that out until the system is turned on.
Mm-hmm.
And solar is a lot more abstract, because like I said, electrical terms of energy, power, this is more abstract to most folks. You buy a roof and you know what you got. You say, all right, those are clearly brand new shingles up there, and when it rains, it doesn't leak in my house, so I guess everything's good. Or you buy an air conditioner, that's a shiny metal box, and I'm cold when I turn it on, so I guess it's good. But when you get solar, it really comes down to, this is how much money I expect to save. It comes down to how strong is my rail, how wind resistant is my solar panel. You're not going to know that until there's a hurricane. So better that you understand how to read the spec sheets.
Right. And of course, if people have questions, we definitely want to help people navigate through it. I think all of our salespeople enjoy spending time trying to go through, and I would argue, I came to work at this company because I think it's I think it was the best option. And similarly, I think we want to spend time with customers, just giving them the facts, because, we feel like that positions us in a strong position, to be able to have educated customers, like you said. So if you're watching this and you're trying to navigate through other proposals that you've had, we definitely want to make time to answer your questions, and getting a proposal from Goldin can be a great way to see how the others stack up. I mean, we're trying to be as transparent as possible with our means and methods, so that you can see that there's, not really any room for misleading you. So definitely consider getting a proposal from Goldin, or asking us any questions that you have along the way. I know one of the things that can be difficult is that, sometimes somebody just comes at us and they say, like, this is what I want. I just want a price. And, we can do that, I guess, but we really prefer to, for the size of the investment that this is, to be able to look at your bills, to be able to size the system and make sure that we're able to do as much diligence as possible. We're happy to spend that time. We think that our customers should be excited to have that level of diligence as well. So it can be some work to send your bills in to get a proposal, but when you're talking about $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 investment, it really is, time well spent to be able to make sure that the system's getting sized correctly, and that it's getting the diligence in it. So
yeah, and the more information that that we're looking at, the more accurate we can be. I mean, sometimes a homeowner might just send 1 month's bill, and we have to explain your consumption changes month by month, seasonally. So in the summertime, you're going to use a lot more energy. And so when we go through this exercise of sizing a system for solar, we always compare the average month's consumption to the average month's production. And we want to get those two things to match. And if somebody's net zero in Florida, the way that will typically be, seen is that you'll actually overproduce in the wintertime and build up a bank of credits, and then apply them in the summertime.
Right.
Because your average consumption equals your average production, that doesn't mean that they're equal on every month by themselves as a standalone month. That means that the average is the average. And what happens is, in the wintertime, it doesn't rain very much here, which lends itself better to, longer, hours of light, or more light. And our consumption's way down because our biggest consumer is the air conditioner.
Right.
And in the summertime, yes, the days are longer. We just had the summer solstice. It's like light until 8:30 now, which is nice. But it rains a lot, and the consumption is through the roof.
Well, and March and April seem like real strong months because you've got longer days, but you don't have those afternoon showers yet. Yeah. So friends of mine that Goldin has installed systems for will be, super excited how much extra they're producing. And, I kind of tell them, yeah, this is the harvest right now. You're going to need some of this as you get through the hotter summer months with your air conditioner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So definitely sizing for the whole year. So
yeah.
Well, cool. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, I think if I was shopping for the first time, this is exactly the kind of thing that I would want to watch. For one, just getting to see that you're spending the time to help educate customers, I think would mean a lot. Oops.
Yep.
I just lost my camera there. But otherwise, I mean, this is a reference that people can go back and look at whenever they need to.
Yeah. Just to recap, I'd say check out Sunbiz. Make sure you have access to those people so that you can always talk to the people that actually are in charge of the company. Check your DPR. You need a solar and electrical license or electrical and roofing, but I would recommend getting somebody with solar, roofing, and electrical. And hopefully those have some of the same people that are managing the business side of it and also managing the technical side of the business. Become very, very, very familiar with the products. Ask all the questions you can possibly think of the products. But remember that the company that you're talking to is going to naturally recommend their own products. So try to have an independent study of the products. When it comes to the panel, 60 cell only if it's going on top of a roof, if it's in Florida, and 4,000 pascals or above in the uplift direction. And make sure that you have panel level monitoring and panel level optimization so that you can track panel level, produce more power. And if you think of any questions, reach out to us anytime. That's what we're here for. And we just want our customers to have the best possible experience.
Plus, we like talking solar, so we selfishly want you to call us up and ask us questions so we can talk about the future of energy.
That's how I see it. I go out to consultations, I'll spend 2 hours or something, and I figure, well, if they don't buy, at least I got to talk about a subject that I love for 2 hours.
Right. It's like our favorite hobby, for sure. Well, cool. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you, Daren, for spending time with us. This has been Fridays with Daren, and we will see you next week for a new episode to help you understand solar and climate change and the future of energy here in our country. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.